Harris is with us this morning, and there's plenty to talk about after a pretty interesting weekend in the Premier League, and of course it's a big game tonight to preview as well. Daniel, at least it turns out that Manchester City are in some way human, and that gives the rest of us who are watching football a bit of hope that this is not going to be the same procession as it was last year.
Yeah, I think they are the best team, but pretty much everything went for them last season. Apart from Mendy getting injured early on, they had more or less a full side all the time, and just the little bounces of the ball that they're not exactly luck, but everything that could go in their favour went in their favour, and that's the reason you don't get seasons like the season they produced very often, and I guess that's why it was so special. But it's unlikely that that's going to happen again, and the teams below them have improved.
Yeah, they scored loads of last-minute winners or injury-time winners last season, which hadn't exactly been part of Man City's culture all the way back, notwithstanding, obviously, the famous Aguero one. But, sometimes a little bit of the heat comes off teams when success comes as easy as it did last season. And, I don't know, we could do with a title race, basically, is what I'm trying to get at.
I mean, I think one of the major turning points of the season, I think they drew with Everton in the second game from behind, and then they played. I think Bournemouth was the third game, and Sterling scored a brilliant last-minute winner. And it was from there that they went on that ridiculous run of consecutive wins. But this time round, they don't have Kevin De Bruyne, and they do have lots of ways of compensating for him missing. But he's probably the best player in the league. And if you're without the best player in the league for 3 months, it would be weird if you didn't drop points, because then you're saying effectively that the best player in the league doesn't actually make any difference, and that's unlikely. So it is a chance probably for Liverpool, who look like being their closest challengers so far, because you get the impression that if Liverpool are going to do something in the league, it's going to have to be from the front, because if City get a lead, then I don't think anyone will be good enough to claw them back. But if City can be put under some pressure, we didn't really see them play under pressure last season, because they were so good, or at least they were so much better than everybody else, that there wasn't a title race pretty much. So there were no games that City went into having to win. And on the two occasions, really, they were put under some pressure, in the Champions League against Liverpool, and then when they needed to beat United to win the league, I guess a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, they folded on both occasions. So there is hope for the other teams, but City are still by far the best team, as far as I can see.
Like, the thing is, we can always fall into the trap of overreacting and getting too bogged down on a result-based conversation. And the truth is, we wouldn't be having this conversation if Manchester City had won on Saturday. But the truth also is that we probably should be having this conversation because of the way Wolves caused them so many problems even before their goal, which clearly just shouldn't have been a goal. Like, there is a blueprint there, Daniel, isn't there, for other teams to follow, especially counter-attacking teams? Because it was very different last year when it was Liverpool doing that. Teams could say, well, that's Liverpool. They've got such a fantastic attacking trio. We'll never be able to match that. But other teams can look at Wolves and say, well, they're a newly promoted team, albeit one of the best promoted teams we've seen. There is a blueprint there for us to follow.
Possibly. I mean, as you say, Wolves have some serious players, and they came up and they know exactly what they're doing. You often don't want to play promoted sides early on, because they're still confident in the previous season, they're still used to winning, and no one quite knows what they're going to get from them. So it was probably a bad time to play Wolves, but they do have some good players. The way that Wolves play isn't necessarily a way that every other team can play. You have to do what you can do with the players that you've got. But if you look at City and you say, well, where is the weakness in that side? You look at the defence and think, well, actually, those defenders aren't that good, that defence isn't that good. The problem that most teams found last season was they couldn't get enough of the ball to get at it. And this is what you usually get with Guardiola teams. You got it with Barcelona, where you look at the team, you think, well, Puyol's not that good a defender, he's a good competitor. Mascherano isn't even a defender. Piqué is dodgy at times also, but good luck getting anywhere near them. And so the way, ideally, you played Guardiola's Barcelona was you attack them. But the problem was getting enough of the ball to attack them, and then what happened when they had an overload in other areas. I mean, you saw it when they murdered United in that second Champions League final. Fergie knew he couldn't match them in midfield, so he went for two strikers, and that didn't work. And it was the same with Bayern Munich. He likes to have, he had Javi Martinez playing at the back. He's not a defender, but again, they just had so much of the ball that it was hard to do anything about it. And I think before last season, I looked at City's team and I looked at the defenders and thought, well, actually, there's a chance for the other teams here, because that defence is no good. But I'd underestimated how much this City team were going to be able to monopolise the ball again. But Wolves have actually have players in midfield that can compete for possession. I don't think most teams are going to be able to do that. But I suppose defending deep and in numbers and attacking quickly and in numbers is to some extent a pro forma, but then that's a pro forma for winning any football match, really.
Can we talk about Manchester United? Obviously, the game tonight has been, not that it's been overshadowed, but certainly there's been a lot of stuff over the weekend about Mourinho's press conference and the reaction to that. And then this other story that's doing the rounds about the class of 92 and the civil war ripping Manchester United apart from inside. What's your take on what's actually happening at the moment?
I think the club's a mess. The Glazers are interested in taking as much money out as they can, and that is not always conducive to having a winning team. Because, as I think we spoke about this last week, if you gave Mourinho unlimited money, would United necessarily win the league? No. So at that point, it makes it a very expensive gamble to even try and win the league and try and fund the team in the way that it's necessary. Then you've got Ed Woodward, who was significantly involved in the appointment of David Moyes, who appointed Louis van Gaal. That was a failure. Who appointed Mourinho, who's done a fair job until this point, but doesn't look like he's going to be able to do the next bit of the job. Who's denying the manager signings that he needs, that it was obvious that they needed. Then you've got Mourinho himself, who looks like he's not that arsed, who looks like he doesn't know what the answers are. And then you've got the players who aren't that good and aren't putting it in either. So there's no real single area of the club that is functioning in the way that it needs to.
It does seem that the discourse around Paul Pogba has changed in the last week, Daniel. I'm not sure what you think. Like, looking at what's been written over the past couple of days, like seeing Alan Shearer in, I think, The Sun this morning talking about his France versus Manchester United form and blaming it all on Paul Pogba, basically, and Jamie Carragher as well on Saturday in his Telegraph column saying the exact same thing, that the reason why Paul Pogba is better for France than Manchester United is because Paul Pogba cares more about France than he does about Manchester United. Let's stop blaming Jose Mourinho for Paul Pogba's failings at this club. Do you agree with that?
I agree with it in part. I don't understand this yen to blame one particular element of something for something that is lots of people's fault. Yeah. Like, if you look at Paul Pogba's form for France, the first thing I can't believe you wouldn't even mention it, is that look at the players that he plays with. Of course, you're going to be more inclined to take one for the team when the players ahead of you are Mbappe, Griezmann. When you're at United, the players aren't as good, so you're going to be less inclined. And also, you have to do it every week. If you can take one for the team and play in a more restrained manner for a month to go and win a World Cup once every 4 years. But Pogba doesn't put it in. And I think we saw that against Brighton. And it's not the first time we saw it. A game that sticks out in my mind is Southampton at home last season. I think it was a 0-0 draw, where Pogba basically didn't cross the halfway line in the second half. I don't think that was because he couldn't be asked. I think it was because he was trying to make a point to Mourinho that he was wasted being played where he was. And I think that is a fair point that Pogba is making. That's not the best way of making it on the pitch like that. I'm not defending him for the way that he makes that point or for whatever he's doing. But if you've got a player like Paul Pogba in United's team, to stick him in front of the back four, given less good players in front of him, just makes no sense. And it's not getting the best out of your best player, and that's the manager's job. And it's the job of the board to give the manager the players that he needs to enable him to feel secure that he's able to do that. And one of the reasons Paul Pogba plays in front of the back four sometimes for United is that Mourinho doesn't rate the back four, and he's still using defenders that Fergie had, who probably weren't even good enough then. So it's, as I said, there's plenty of blame to go around and no need to be sparing. No one comes out of this looking good. Everyone comes out of this looking like a dickhead, and that's like it doesn't have to be one person's fault. And this desire to find one cause for something that's more complicated than that is not just something that's wrong with football, it's something that's wrong with lots of other things as well.
Speaking of which, the class of 92 have apparently decided somewhere along the way that they want to own the club. How fanciful is this? How outrageous is this? How ridiculous is this? Are they a stalking horse really for somebody else to come in and try and take the club off the Glazers? Because let's remember, it would be 3.5 billion to buy Manchester United at this point, and I'm not really sure that they have that behind the couch.
Well, that's very good of them, isn't it? But there seems to be no element of Manchester that Gary Neville doesn't want to own. And but I think that it doesn't make me feel entirely comfortable the way that bits of Manchester are being bought by these guys and gentrified and other things, and famous old buildings they're trying to knock down and all the rest of it. However, when it comes to Manchester United, if you're asking me who I think would be a better guardian of Manchester United, Gary Neville or the Glazers, I mean, that's no contest. And I'm sure that if the Class 92 decided that they wanted to own United, then I mean, it doesn't take a genius to think that the things that they've been doing until this point make it look like perhaps that's the end game. Why wouldn't it be? They won't be doing it with their own money. It won't be the money that Gary Neville's earned from playing football, and earned from Sky, and earned from cafe football or hotel football or all the rest of it. It'll be presumably with Peter Lim's money or with someone else's money. And I would much rather that these blokes owned United than anyone else. I mean, ideally, you don't want United to be owned by anyone. You want United to be owned by supporters, or at least 51% of it owned by supporters. But they are supporters, and it would be interesting to see if that did happen, at what point they would be wanting to see a return, and the people that were backing them would want to see a return on that money. But it's not. I guess the aim would be less to use United like a personal ATM, which is how the Glazers use it. So it doesn't make me entirely happy, but it would be a much better situation than the one that we're in now, where you've got United owned by people that just want money. You've got someone making decisions who's basically appointed himself director of football, who doesn't know anything whatsoever about football, who's overruling a manager who's already proved himself as an all-time great, who in a lot of ways was the right manager for United, but in just as many ways was the wrong manager for United. So I don't know. I didn't particularly like what the Class 92 did with Salford City. Here's a club that belongs to a group of fans. We're going to buy it. We're going to change its colours to red because we like the colour red. I mean, come on, how old are you guys? And we're going to make it about ourselves, and as though it's some kind of Manchester United subsidiary, which it isn't. I mean, and we're going to make the league basically non-competitive because we're going to plough in so much money that it's going to be impossible for other teams to live with us. None of that stuff makes me feel comfortable. It didn't make me feel comfortable when Roman Abramovich did it. It doesn't make me feel comfortable when they changed Cardiff City's colours. It didn't make me feel comfortable when Manchester City did it. So, but there's a lot to get behind, and there's a lot to not like about it.
What's going to happen tonight?
I think not many goals. Pochettino, on the one hand, has I think lost every time he's come to Old Trafford, but on the other hand, definitely with Spurs. But on the other hand, Spurs have been better than United for quite a lot of that time, so sooner or later they're going to win. I think that you'll see a much better performance than you saw against Brighton because, I mean, partly just because it's probably physically, biologically, psychologically, scientifically impossible for United to play quite as badly again. I think they'll probably go 3 at the back or 5 at the back because Mourinho probably feels that he doesn't quite trust any centre-back pairing, so there's a bit more safety in numbers. I'm not really sure why United haven't been playing 2 up front for a long time because they don't have any wingers, but they do have some good centre forwards. Spurs look to be improving, but they will know that they don't often beat United, and but they do have a more settled side than United. They're much more fluid than United, but we've seen them freeze against United on more than one occasion, and United's best performance probably in the entire post-Fergie era came getting the cup semi-final against Spurs when they came back from 1-0 down. And although they only beat them 2-1, it was actually pretty comfortable. So it's United quite a hard team to predict. I guess I would go for a low-scoring draw probably.
Fair enough. Daniel, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million.
No worries, see you again.